Good Wednesday evening, everyone. You are watching your favorite Wednesday evening habit. Direct line live with our special guest this evening is Barry Donadio, national security expert. Our hosts today are Mark Unkerfer and Don Irvine. Take it away, guys.
Well, welcome, Barry. It's good to see you again. You're a man of many hats.
How you doing? Thank you for having me again.
You've done you've been sergeant of arms for the state party for a number of years. But what many people don't realize is you're an author of, was it 7 books? You've written a number of books, and how did you get started as an author, Barry?
Well, I got started as an author because I felt like I had some experiences that I wanted to share with the public, and I just figured, why not? And also, I was at an event when TWA Flight 800 crashed. I had written some stuff that originally I thought the FBI would be asking me about. I put it into a book, and I felt like I could help other families and victims, people that were affected by the crash. I was hoping that they could read what I wrote, and maybe that would solve some things that they were looking for.
You're having trouble. You may want to work on your audio a little bit. I know we were talking.
Is that on my end or yours?
On your end. But in any event, yeah, if you lean into the mic, that may work better. So you let's talk about, you wrote TWA Flight 800, and it's basically a first-person account because you were there on the scene. Why don't you set it up and describe how you ended up there and as one of the first responders?
Well, okay, I was already a well-seasoned firefighter. I started at the age of 19, and I served on a Long Island Fire Department. And then later on, by the time I was 25, 26, I was already an emergency medical technician. And I served with the East Merchants Community Volunteer Ambulance. And this was a very well-skilled, a small agency, but very well-skilled with some very, very nice people, very good people. And very devoted people. And, just like any other day, we had a call. And back then we had pagers. And you got a page, and Fire Communications, or Medcom at that time, went over the air. And I was coming back from Southampton, and the call went out that a plane crashed. So I had just passed through East Mauritius and never really thought that the plane would be as big as it ended up being. There was a small airport in East Mauritius at the time, and sometimes some small Cessnas would have issues. They would also have some skydiving injuries, but nothing to this magnitude. So the call went out, responded to the ambulance. They responded so quickly that the ambulances had already left the ambulance garage. And I jumped in another vehicle with a paramedic, and we raced down to the East Merchants Coast Guard station, where the rescue and effort took place to, as a rally point, and also a triage.
Now, for those who don't recall or weren't around, I mean, this was a major air catastrophe. I think 230 people died. It was one of the worst crashes in recent decades to take place in the United States. So tell us more a little bit about what did you find when you were there?
Well, originally we got to the Coast Guard station. There was quite a bit of assets, fire department assets. There were quite a few ambulances, police, as you would imagine, Coast Guard personnel. And it was our understanding that, there were survivors, and they would be bringing them to the East Merchants Coast Guard Station, and we began to choose a building to where we would bring the injured, triage them, and hopefully treat them. We knew this was a terrible crash, but we had a lot of hope, and we wanted to treat the injured. So I was very excited as a young EMT to, I remember saying to myself, well, I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna save somebody tonight. And as we know now, those survivors never came. So it may have been a miscommunication. Maybe there were never survivors. I don't know to this day. But I can only tell you, after a couple of hours went by, we started to, realize what the situation was, which was, unfortunately, all hands were lost.
Right. Now, there's a lot of threads to this. One of was that sort of the initial thought that it might be a terrorist attack of some kind. There had been just a range of speculation. People didn't know what caused it. And as I understand it, there was some conflict or some questioning about who should be in charge. Should it be the FBI or the NTSB, the safety agency that reviews crashes after they take place to find out what happened? Did you see any of that? Did you witness any of that back and forth?
Yeah, I would say in the very initial stages at the Coast Guard station, there was some confusion. I remember asking myself, who's in charge here? There was even a Marine there. There were, one Marine. There was like a commander there. There were police. There were fire department, NTSB. I saw members of the FBI as well. So I think, like with any big emergency, there is that initial confusion, if you will. A large-scale mass casualty event, and then maybe later on that got cleared up very quickly. And I always interpreted after those initial moments that the FBI was in charge of that scene. And we all know that NTSB is the experts on plane crashes, so I would assume that their investigative tactics are unmatched as far as knowing what happened to the plane, but the overall investigation would be FBI authority.
So that got resolved over time. I mean, actually, just to jump ahead, my understanding is that part of the confusion, it took a number of years, but got resolved that NTSB now takes the lead on that. Although the FBI can do an investigation, but I guess part of the confusion at the time was not knowing, was this a criminal event or was this some sort of uniquely air related disaster?
Right. And I think each agency at the time acted very appropriately. Mm-hmm. We just didn't know. We knew that a plane crashed, and as far as I was concerned, as an emergency medical technician, that didn't go really far beyond my thinking. My thinking at that time was, let me help some people. Let's save these people. Let's get them to the hospital. Later on in my career, I was Secret Service, and maybe that would have entered my mind later in my career. But I was a 25-year-old EMT that was there to help people on a volunteer ambulance, and that's about as far as my thinking went. Just trying to help people at that point.
Now, you referenced the fact that you wrote the book a number of years later. It was more like a decade and a half, I guess, roughly. What caused you to decide to do the book?
Well, I always had the writings down. I just wrote down stuff that I thought maybe the FBI would want me to testify to, or I figured they were going to, come and visit me. It was my understanding they were just visiting everybody, just getting witness statements. So I was a military police officer at the time. I'd been in law enforcement also. So I just figured, okay, well, let me get a good statement down. Let me write down, maybe they can solve a mystery just on something I've seen. So I wrote quite a few pages of stuff, and I just kept it. I never got interviewed by the FBI, and I just assumed that they got everything they needed. I didn't see the plane crash. I only saw the aftermath. So for their investigation, probably they didn't need to talk to me. And as you know, I had been serving in government all the way up until 2013. So when I became a civilian, I figured maybe I can help some members of the family, families that were affected by this crash, people that are curious. Maybe I can put one clue, one thing that I seen when I was there, and they could use it to piece together some other mysteries or questions they may have had. And that was really my intent for it.
Now, what's been the reaction of the book? It's been a number of years since you released it.
I think it's really another book among other books that people read that are interested. There's many books about TWA Flight 800. To my knowledge, to this day, I'm the only one that wrote a book about it that was actually there that night. So maybe there's, I guess, people that are writing books to make money or be competitive, they might find that as kind of like not so much jealousy, but maybe competitive. I'm real, I was there. Where other people may not have been there, or they're just sharing theories on stuff, or maybe they gathered evidence. So I think it's within the top 5 books where if you buy a book and you want to read about TWA Flight 800, I think mine's probably within the top 5 that you buy. So I think it's been positive, and I think hopefully somebody has bought the book, read it, and maybe I've been able to give them some kind of comfort by maybe solving a question they may have had from that night, or maybe getting some closure out of it, because that was my whole reasoning for it.
Now, Don, I'm trying to refresh my recollection, but at the time, or in the aftermath, there was a range of different theories that developed about what happened. And some people claim they saw some kind of missile, or they saw some kind of attack, and that was one area of speculation. What do you recall about that?
Yeah, I mean, I know my father, was contacted by various people. The late Bill Donaldson was a former Navy guy, and he looked into that, and I think his website probably is still active, or somebody's probably still keeping it going. I mean, he died quite a number of years ago, but he had done some of the most extensive investigation. And then another guy named Jim Sanders also had done things. I mean, to Barry's point, I mean, these guys were not there necessarily on the ground. So, it is things that they were piecing together. I think I would venture to say that Jim Sanders today probably still says, there hasn't been a satisfactory conclusion to this at all. My father was somewhat infamous in the sense that he actually went to an NTSB hearing and made enough of a fuss that they actually physically carried him out because he refused to leave. Thankfully, my mother never saw that on television. It was picked up by Japanese television, which she watched religiously. But my father managed to, he got me into collude with him to get my mother distracted when the news report was about to hit on NHK. So she would never see that report, that of him being carried out. But, I think even to his dying day, there was still a lot of questions in his mind as to what happened. I mean, obviously it was a huge tragedy. And, it's a difficult thing. I mean, you want to have some faith and trust in government agencies, and the NTSB definitely has, a long track record of experience. But there are things that sometimes aren't really totally explainable. And I do recall that Jim Sanders had a lot of questions about things going on there, because they did bring a lot of the wreckage to a big warehouse, and they weren't there was a lot of hush hush about that, and a lot of speculation as to exactly how much of the plane, the fuselage, the things that they were able to put together, and what did that really look like under a reconstruction. Were they really able to prove that this was more of a vapor type of a thing, or did some object actually strike it? I don't know personally to this day, what happened there. And unfortunately, my father is gone, and so is Bill Donaldson. So I can't actually ask them those questions anymore.
It's interesting. I mean, Barry, you had the advantage of seeing things right away, and the immediate reaction, and then obviously an investigation would have, moved fairly quickly. NTSB, I mean, it's not a criticism, but it's simply a statement. It takes a while for them to do their analysis. And if you think about how difficult it is to collect debris in the sea after what was an explosion, I think we can agree on that. And then to reconstruct it, it's just amazing that they're able to draw any conclusions whatsoever. But that said, their final report did not come out for 4 years. It didn't come out to 2000. And as a result, you've got a period of time in which there's a lot of speculation about what happened.
Right. If I may, first, let me just say that, the other people that have written books, done investigation, I don't want to water down their work whatsoever. I have a lot of respect for them. Maybe that didn't come out so right on my end, but, I'm interested in their books as much as anybody else's books. So, I think they did a good job, and we need to answer questions. They did a good job asking and answering questions that we should all be asking and answering questions about any tragedy, whatever. We're still asking questions about the Alamo. Okay, from 1836, we're still coming up with conclusions of what exactly happened. So I think for the next 100 years, we will be doing the same with this tragedy. But
you're opening up a whole nother can of worms there, Barry.
Yeah, I am.
Which is, what can you? So I know that you're working on a book. You're working on an Alamo book, but you're also working on a book about Maryland being at war for a century and a half.
That's right.
Am I recollecting that right?
Well,
so without your releasing the book, how are we going to know what? Can we find out what the status is? What's happening with Maryland?
The status is, well, all these books we're talking about are still right here, and it takes a long time to get it out in writing. And it's exhausting. Anybody that's watching this that has written a book, it's exhausting to write a book. You need a lot of silence, a lot of preparation, and then you make mistakes and you find yourself correcting your own book over and over and over. What I can say about the Alamo book is that there's some things about the Alamo, if you dig deep about the politics behind it all, that are going to be mind-boggling. And as far as the other book there, the other one you mentioned, which one you were asking, Mark?
About Maryland.
Maryland was at war. If you looked at the records, if you search records, Maryland was a war zone for approximately 100 years, and it was against the American Indians. So at one point, the governor of Maryland gave an order to shoot an American Indian on sight. So basically where I'm living here, I live on Kent Island in Maryland's Eastern Shore. That was a war zone for 100 years straight. People have a hard time understanding that and conceiving that. Now, I wanted to get back to one thing you mentioned about the crash of TWA Flight 800. That, remember, to our audience, that plane crashed in the water. That makes any investigation nearly impossible for a quick solution. Okay. So even if somebody saw something and thinks they know what happened, it would take a long time to get all that stuff off the bottom of the ocean. It's affected by the ocean in certain ways. What a hard task that would be, not only for the NTSB, but the FBI. I think my perception, they did the best they absolutely could. There was a lot of people involved that had their hearts in this, whether it was a rescue or a first responder, FBI people, NTSB people, Suffolk County Police, New York, greatest agency. Love those guys. And even NYPD was out there. Their divers were out there. I served on the ambulance still at the Coast Guard station. There were divers hurt trying to salvage that. We would get calls to the Coast Guard station weeks later that people were getting hurt. Police divers got hurt, even just trying to do the recovery. So I could imagine what that investigation would be. And, my heart goes out to anybody that's involved in that, anybody that suffered from that crash, the family. They're in my prayers. I prayed that night for them because that was the only thing I could possibly do for them. And they're always a regular portion of my prayer session.
Just for our viewers, after I began, and I, would certainly concur with you that the challenge of gathering materials and collecting it, and then, as you described, taking it to a warehouse to try and fit it together to figure out what pieces went with where, that at the end of the day, again, after a number of years, NTSB concluded that there was some kind of, I think I have this right, electrical short that triggered one of the gas tanks, one of the fuel tanks, I should say, exploding. And then that caused the rest of the plane after that explosion to come down. And I haven't read it closely, but there's a lot of detail to go into that conclusion.
Right. I would just tell you, I would defer to the NTSB on their conclusion, as well as the FBI or anything that the military may have had with findings, or the Coast Guard. That would have been out of my realm, and I would only be a spectator from, just like anybody else. Any of the investigation really beyond my initial first response would just be an opinion, basically. It wouldn't be much of an opinion.
Now, of all the topics, and you've done a couple, you have a book in your mind, in your head about the Alamo, and other about Maryland. Now, you were in the Secret Service during both the George W. Bush and the Obama administration, as I recall.
That's
and right. Do you got a book in there, or are you subject to a non-disclosure agreement?
Yeah, so heavily non-disclosure agreements there. There wouldn't be much I could say other than about the flowers, perhaps, at the White House. I tell you, historically, it's a beautiful place, and I admired the grounds. It's absolutely beautiful. I can tell you, a lot of people don't know that the White House is actually a national park. So it's actually a National Park Service place. It's not owned by the Secret Service or even the President of the United States. It's a national park. Yep.
So if we turn the camera off, can you tell us any stories that you're not supposed to tell? Is that...
Let's see. Let me think about that. I think I might be able to report that me and many other people I worked with almost got bit by President Bush's dog, Barney. It's a lovely creature, but he sometimes wanted to bite. So other than that, no, everything else would be just about top secret.
So you're going to throw Barney under the bus, is what you're telling me.
Well, I think that dog grew to love me, but yeah, she would, he would turn around and snip you if you got too close sometimes. You never know what you got from Barney the dog, but still lovely. Yeah.
So no Secret Service book there, then, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't think so, because by the time you write it all and then, have that submitted for review, because that would have to be reviewed because of the clearances I've held.
Right.
It just sounds like a lot of work, and
they take out all the good parts.
Yeah. Well, I guess if there was demand for it, and I had a lot of people coming up to me and say, hey, you should write a book about the Secret Service. Other people have written books about the Secret Service, and I think a lot of them are beneficial. And I would defer you to the Secret Service. Where else to know more about the Secret Service than go to their website? They tell just about everything that they can be told, and it's a rewarding experience. It's great. They are the best of the best. I'm proud to be a part of that. That runs in my blood for the rest of my life. And hopefully there's a piece of me with them. There are people there as an agency as a whole. I trust them with my life, even today. And I would call them if I needed help, even today. So that's one of the greatest agencies in the United States, if not planet Earth.
Now, one of the other books that you did, and I may have the name, you did a novel, which is that day when hell froze over.
It's a fiction.
Well, I understand it's a novel. I mean, it's fiction. Yes. No. Yeah. And it's certainly not based on personal experience because it goes back a millennium, right?
I wasn't alive.
Sorry? You were not alive. Not based on personal experience.
No, not at all.
But I'm trying to think. I had a description of it here, but it has to do with a secret force convened by the Pope in about the year 1000 or sometime there, whatever. What got you started doing that? What was the trigger for doing that book?
I wanted to see if I could sell more books writing fiction. So that was my motivation behind that, to be honest. And so I've learned that the answer to that is no. So it's a very well written book. It's better written than my first book. Remember, being an author is like a journey. Your first book is not going to be your best book. It's going to be later on. I wasn't really an author in college or high school or anything of that nature. So it's a new fit on me, but it's very well written, and it's reminiscent maybe of some of the special teams that I've served on, United States Secret Service Emergency Response Team. It kind of gives you a feel of the camaraderie of maybe serving on a special unit, if not in the Secret Service, the Army or the military, some agency that has special units, special forces, for instance. So I think I tried to give the feeling of that special group of elite guys that were given a special secret mission by the Pope to do some work in Iran. And so it's all fictional, but it kind of gives you a taste of camaraderie on special teams in the military.
So setting it in the past, did that give you extra liberties? Did that give you, did you take a different approach because it was, as you described, historical fiction?
You're exactly right. I don't have to have anybody look at it and authorize it, right? If I write about something today, well, I'm under scrutiny of, as you know, people that have top secret clearances have to, have stuff looked at before it's released. And
so the long and the short is that you didn't have to go to the Vatican to get permission to undo secrets from 1,000 years ago.
No, because they're all fiction.
Right,
so,
of course.
If it was the real secret, maybe they'd be a little upset at me. But It's all fiction. It's a complete fictional thing, and the places in the book are real. Some of the there are types of soldiers and I researched heavily. It's pretty interesting. Almost gives you a feeling of like the movie that I love, the movie 300. Everybody likes that. A lot of us weightlifting guys love that movie. It kind of gets us in the mood to lift weights and stuff like that. So the book is like that. And then I found, oddly enough, which I did not write it really so much for women to like, but women like the book because there is romance in the book. And I tried to give the book everything, action, romance, drama. So women like the book. I'm hearing more from women liking the book than from men, which was not what I intended to do. So that was a pretty interesting outcome with that book.
So if you were going to give your book a movie style rating, what kind of rating would you give it? R?
Probably R for violence. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
That book, and I failed to mention, that book was written to be a movie. That book in particular, I was hoping to get it on Epix television at the time, or an Epix movie. So that was my goal. So if you read it, and I've had readers come back to me and tell me, that's like a movie. That's what they say. I say, yeah, well, that's exactly how I wrote. I wrote it to be like you were watching a movie. So I did succeed with that. So.
Well, let me change gears a little bit. Many of us, I confess, I don't, I until very recently, I didn't. I mean, I saw you earlier this week. I didn't know you were an author. What I frankly know more about you is you do a lot of work in basically helping people navigate getting gun licenses and getting the training and basically meeting the requirements that they need to fulfill. And you do through your company, public security, a bunch of training programs. Can you kind of elaborate on that, on those services and what you do with that?
Yeah, it's been quite a passion to legally arm Americans. It's a very important right that we have here in this country. We're the only country that I know that even people that are not American citizens that are here legally, they can buy a gun. If you're here and you're a permanent resident from whatever country, you could be in America and buy a gun. And that's an incredible freedom because, like I said, I don't know any country that you could do that. As long as you're being legal and follow the law. Now, I teach people a 4-hour class, which is what's called the handgun qualification license. That's here in Maryland. In Maryland, you have to have that class in order to buy a pistol. You have to be fingerprinted, and there's a licensing process through the Maryland State Police. And we've given this class, this training to hundreds of people in Maryland, and we're very proud of that accomplishment. The other thing that I do is provide the 16-hour training that is required for people to wear and carry that pistol. That's where we do a tremendous amount of shooting. I really push myself as a self-defense school, more than just like, hey, you want your license, let's just run you through this and get it over with. So my students, and you could read the reviews, they're very happy when they're done. And they're quite capable to defend themselves, their family, their country when I'm done with them. So it's a great honor to do it. And I've made a lot of friends doing it now. And we've done a lot of good things. And I've made people that are just simply afraid of a gun, I've made them experts in about 16 hours.
So an important part of that is really teaching people, familiarizing people with the safety protocols.
Yes, absolutely. It's mostly, a lot of it is safety. A lot of it is knowing the laws, at least here in Maryland. And the most important thing I can tell people that are watching, if you're thinking about doing something with a pistol, you may be legally carrying it, but in the state of Maryland, we all have a duty to retreat if we're in public. You have a duty to retreat. Just keep that in your mind because you may be held legally liable, either criminally or civilly. So that's a possibility. And I also say defer to your attorney, or even the state's attorney, attorney general. Ask these legal questions before you do anything with a pistol. But this is the kind of stuff we go over, and people are astounded. They didn't even know they had a duty to retreat in the state of Maryland.
Have you seen a change? Obviously, we've had some changes in the law that have taken place in the last session. How is that impacting things?
If you're talking about Senate Bill 1.
Well, yes, I'm referencing. Of course, we could talk about the legal. It's under legal challenge, but it has to do with.
Well, it's a law that's been put in through the legislature that makes almost every place illegal in the state of Maryland to even carry a pistol, which, from my interpretation, even a right-of-way, it would be illegal to carry a pistol. So there's a lot of people that are not happy with this, that especially they went through the training already and they paid the state of Maryland all the licensing fees. They did everything legally, and now they're, this law is being pushed that they can't even carry a pistol anywhere legally. So they've come to me and I say, well, you have to talk to the Maryland legislature. It's there's nothing I can do. It's about a law being voted in. But if you are a gun owner, you need to look into these laws, because I don't think if you get charged with something, the answer, I don't know, or I didn't know it was a law, I don't think that's going to go good for you. Again, make sure you have an attorney. Every gun owner should have an attorney on their Rolodex just in case. And, exercise good safety at all times and stay out of trouble. That's the great advice for a gun owner.
So we've obviously not had a spike in crime in Maryland over the last couple of years. Has that increased the number of people who are taking courses and getting guns?
It has. It started with the riots, and the pandemic compounded it. And I have all sorts of people. You name it. They come from all walks of life. They're all different sizes, creeds, colors, sexual orientation, political affiliation. They're all coming to these classes. You know why? Because they're all worried about the future, and they're worried about somebody coming in their home. So it's been an increase of that. I like to see all different types of people coming to these classes, so they see, the possibilities and I think as Americans, we forgot about these rights and we forgot about shooting in general. But literally 100 years ago, all of our grandparents probably carried guns and knew how to shoot, but that was just a way of life back then. And we've kind of gone away from that, but people are now coming back to it.
So what advice do you have now? Should people continue to get guns, or is it become too difficult in Maryland because of the carry requirements?
Yeah, I would say get your gun legally and go through all the process. And I think it would be harder to take away a gun that you already own legally. So I do tell people, if you're thinking about it, just go ahead, get the training, get it right, become a safety advocate for others that don't have the training. Spread the knowledge that you're going to get from our classes and be an advocate for this. If you're never going to go and shoot, at least be an owner and do it the right way and make it safe. And, educating the children on how to safely handle the guns is going to save lives too, by the way. So that would be my advice. Go and legally get a pistol. In the state of Maryland, you can now still get a rifle or a shotgun without a license. You can walk into a gun shop and you need a driver's license and a clean record, and you could walk out with a shotgun or a rifle. So, that's everybody should have that just in case. That's just the way I'm wired, and that's the way I am. Other people don't feel that way, but that's how I am. That's the advice I would give people.
So another part of your business is, well, first of all, we should probably, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in taking one of the courses?
They usually just look us up on the internet, simple internet search. We're a very strong internet presence, and many people just simply call. And I know a lot of people, they simply call my cell phone and, they want to know what they could do, and I explain it to them. It's very time consuming because I know a lot of people. And a lot of people are calling me, and I spend a lot of time, explaining things, but that's okay. And at the end, it ends up being really good.
One of the things you mentioned, and it's probably worth elaborating on, you described the fact that there's a real broad diversity of people who go take your courses, obviously in order to qualify.
Yes.
And it's not possible to just kind of characterize it as a particular demographic. And I guess I heard you say that's become more prevalent in the last couple of years. That
absolutely. You have every race, creed, and color. So there's no norm. I never know who's going to come, and I really like that because I want more people educated, and I want more people handling guns safely.
And what is the breakdown male-female?
It's about 60% men, and there is about 40% women, which is probably higher than most people would think. So sometimes we get some classes, it could be as high as like 70% women. We've had darn near close to all women in a lot of these classes. So that word is spreading too. A lot more women are armed than from the beginning when we started doing this. I mean, a lot. Now you have to also understand there are other people doing this training, so they're also, giving a lot of women training too. So there are a lot of women, um, you know, carrying guns now than, let's just say, a year ago. Yep.
Now, the other aspect of your sort of business or your day job is doing security. So, talk a little bit about the different security services that you provide.
Sure. So we are licensed to do a lot of things, private investigation, uh, you know, private security can mean a lot of things. Bodyguarding, for instance, as you know, I'm executive protection for many high level clients, high risk clients, so it could be anything as simple as being security for an event for a nonprofit organization to uh, protecting a presidential candidate, which I was doing 2 weeks ago. So it's exciting. It's rewarding. Um, we're keeping people safe. We're making people feel safe when we're out there. We have cars that are uniformed and they're out there deterring crime. So I've done a great deal of work with my private security company, private investigation firm. We're not only licensed in Maryland, we're also up in New York. So we're able to do quite a bit of stuff. And the way the laws are in Maryland with private detective and private security companies, it's almost like the law hasn't changed in a very long time. So in theory, I guess you could technically be like an old-fashioned posse. You can legally arm people to be a posse, and that could be a private security company. That's what they would do in the 1800s. If a client had a lot of money and he needed, I guess his ranch protected, well, they can hire 30 guys, and it would be like a small army, and that's what they would do. And it was all under the same licensing. I don't think much changed in the licensing in Maryland since then. It's quite interesting.
That's probably a good thing for you.
Yeah, it's a good thing for me, but we're very, very disciplined. Um, we're not gun ho, so to say. We're very non, escalatory. Um, we are very, very interested in deterring stuff, and usually by our professionalism, that stops 99.9% of any issues. And we never know what we deter. The bad guys don't come to us later and say, "Hey, I saw you and a bunch of your guys standing there, so I decided not to do something." They'll never report back to us. So we may have stopped countless things that we'll never know of. But yeah, a bunch of people on my staff, we've done a very good job. We're very happy with everything we've done. And yes, we will stop and help a turtle on the side of the road get across the road. We do that. We're not shy to say that either.
So, are there particular tells that you look for that suggest that perhaps somebody is out for no good?
You really have to watch the crowd and look for a baseline of behaviors. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to see that, you just never know. We kind of keep an eye on everybody. It really depends on the event. It depends on what I'm doing. If it's an event where I'm providing executive protection at a political event, I pretty much know everybody there already, and I'm watching maybe people I don't know a little bit closer. That doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong or anything, but really observation and being able to see something unfold before it happens and be able to react to prevent it is probably the most important thing.
Okay. Well, that certainly makes sense. So just one last question is, again, what's the best way to reach you?
So, you can always call my company number, 855-589-2267, or publicsecurityllc.com. You can also go to barrydonadio.com. That's my personal website. If you just simply put my name into the computer on an internet search, I have a pretty good internet input, so you should be able to find me fairly easily now. Although when I was working at the White House, I didn't even sometimes have a cell phone or even have internet or even an email. So what a change, right? So I'm a public person now, and I'm pretty easy.
You're easy to get a hold of, and we really appreciate the work that you do with the state party and being available as a resource to, as you say, head off incidents that we don't know about, but being that presence that makes everybody feel that much more secure.
Well,
I'm fascinated about, think both Don and I appreciate hearing a side of you that most people are not familiar, which is Barry the author. So thank you for joining us tonight.
There'll be more books coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. See you.